Let's start with something very simple. A pothole. I'm not talking about those overflowing roads or knee-deep ravines. I'm just talking about your good old normal potholes that you see every day. You know, the kind that you swerve around on your way to office or college. You know, the one that's been there for so long it almost feels permanent. You know, it feels like it's part of the landscape itself. One good look at such potholes reveals everything you need to know about a city. It tells you how roads are built without any planning, how repairs happen only after accidents, how complaints go unanswered, and how something so very basic is never really fixed. And it's not just the roads, it's also the power that goes out without any warning. It's the water that smells strange some days. It's the garbage that's been piling up in every corner of every street that nobody wants to claim. It's also the sewage lines that get mixed with rainwater every year as if it's normal. And none of these feels shocking anymore. Because when broken systems become routine, we stop asking why. We simply adjust. We buy inverters. We buy water tanks. We learn which roads to avoid. And we don't fix the city. We work around it. And that's when it hits you. You don't live in a functioning city. You're living in a workaround. A place where you pay first world taxes to live a third world life. One day the power goes out. And instead of asking any questions, you just immediately pull out your phone and subconsciously turn on this flashlight. Because you were used to it. You knew exactly that this was going to happen. You're not surprised. You're not angry. You're calm. Surprisingly calm. Because at some point you stopped expecting things to work. We stopped asking why the road outside of our house hasn't been fixed in 5 years. We don't ask why the water smells strange on some days, why the lift breaks every month, and why the power goes out every time it rains. We stopped asking why and we started adjusting to things. We bought inverters, we bought water tanks, we learned which roads to avoid after 7 p.m., which areas flood first, and which months to expect dengue. Here slowly and quietly, survival became the norm. You can hear a lot of people talk about corruption, politics, bad governance, but you'll never hear anybody talk about normalization. Normalization of subpar facilities and amenities. Because once dysfunction becomes routine, it stops becoming a problem. This is why a city where electricity fails is not considered broken. Even a road full of craters and potholes isn't considered a failure. This is also why a sewage leak isn't considered a crisis. When people stop expecting things to get better, they start to get worse. And people just don't stop at that. They start defending this behavior. At least it's better than before. It's like this everywhere. What can you do? These sentences may sound harmless, but they aren't. This is submissive behavior. This is the language of surrender. When you normalize dysfunction, you lose dignity. You stop asking why basic infrastructure feels like a luxury. This is how exactly a broken system survives. Not through force, not through fear, but through acceptance. And once that happens, the city doesn't need to improve itself. It just needs its citizens to adapt. And that's what you do. You adapt. And when this starts to happen, people start looking at private escapes. You start to notice it quietly, not through announcement, not through headlines, but through walls, high walls, gated entrances, and security guards at every corner. At first, it feels like progress, good society, premium living, world-class amenities. But look closely. What are these places really offering? Because when public systems fail, people don't demand fixes. They build substitutes. Private water tanks, private generators, private security, and private garbage collection. Entire mini-cities built inside a failing city. And before our very eyes, a city stops being a shared space and starts becoming a collection of mini bubbles, each bubble trying to survive on its own. Inside these gated compounds, life seems normal. The light stays on, the water flows, the roads are clean. But when you step outside the gate, that's when the reality collapses. The richer a city gets, the more disconnected it becomes with its population. We didn't fix the system. We escaped it. And escape always comes at a cost. Because once the wealthy stop depending on the public systems, those systems lose their most powerful defenders. Why fight for better roads when your society has your own? Why demand clean water when you can afford water tankers? Why care about public hospitals when you have private ones? The city is now divided into two zones. Not by law, not by force, but by convenience. And the people who are left outside of these bubbles, they aren't just poorer now, they're invisible. Their suffering doesn't affect the gated communities, so the city keeps functioning. And somewhere along the lines, we forget empathy. You know, when a city goes through something like this for a long time, the residents of that city start to adapt. And it doesn't stop at that. They also become very hardened. Not out of cruelty, but out of exhaustion. At first, you feel bad. You see someone stuck in traffic in the rain. You see someone walking through sewage water. You see a hospital corridor packed with patients. And it hurts. But then it happens again, then again, then again. And when it starts to happen ever so often, your brain does something interesting. It tries to protect itself. And in that attempt, it makes you cold. You stop feeling things. And not because you're heartless, but because caring for something hurts even more when you know that nothing's gonna change. So you scroll past. You look ahead, you mind your own business, and you start telling yourself that everybody goes through something, and I'm not gonna feel bad for other people when I have things to worry about of my own. I do not have time for other people's suffering. And just like that, empathy becomes optional. This is how a broken system treats people, not to be cruel, but to be numb. When somebody's suffering becomes background noise, action becomes optional. This is why a flooded street becomes normal. A patient waiting on the floor becomes expected. A dead signal during an emergency becomes unfortunate, not shocking, not outrageous, just another day. And this is where the real collapse begins. Not with infrastructure, not with money, but with indifference. The tragedy isn't that cities fail. It's just that the people adjust so well to the failure that they stop demanding better. And this is how you get a bunch of people to start defending this dysfunction. You heard it before. At least it's not as bad as it used to be. At least we're developing. Every country goes through this phase. You can't always expect things to be perfect. But who's expecting things to be perfect? They just have to be functional. These lines sound reasonable, mature even. But look closer. These aren't explanations, these are excuses. The system now doesn't even have to silence people anymore. Someone points out bad roads. The building so much, what do you expect? Somebody talks about pollution. Well, at least it's not as bad as China. The comparison never stops. The whataboutery never stops. When somebody mentions corruption, bro, this happens everywhere. You see the pattern here? Every problem is first acknowledged and then immediately neutralized. Not fixed, not challenged, just normalized. This is how dysfunction survives long term, not through force, but through rationalization. You see, when we defend broken systems, we become part of what keeps it broken. We stop demanding better performance, we stop demanding better governance, and then we start competing over who can tolerate the most discomfort, who can survive the heat, who can handle the traffic, who can adjust the most. This is how suffering becomes a badge of honor. And here's where the conversation completely flips. Instead of asking, why is this happening? We start asking, why are you complaining? And that's the moment when accountability dies a silent death. Because now the system doesn't have to improve because you're enduring it. And that's what it expects. Endurance. And once endurance becomes a virtue, collapse no longer feels like a failure. It then looks like normal life. And at this stage, this problem turns into a habit. Now, because of this habit, things stop feeling broken. Not because they're fixed, but people have simply adapted to them. Life keeps moving. People wake up, commute, work, scroll, sleep. The system hums along, barely keeping things together. And here, once you look closely, you start to realize that your system doesn't work on efficiency. It works on routine. Hence, the people have stopped trusting their governments and have started to find their own workarounds. They know exactly which hospital to avoid, which roads to never take after sunset, which offices respond, and which offices don't. And the ones that don't may actually work for you, if you know what I mean. This isn't civic knowledge, this is survival knowledge. At this stage, hope quietly leaves the room, not with anger, not with protests, but with acceptance. People here stop asking when things will improve and start planning how to live with things as they are. This is the most dangerous phase of all, because systems don't collapse when people are angry. They collapse when people stop caring. When the goal shifts from changing the system to simply navigating around it, you feel it everywhere. And suddenly nobody talks about the future of the city anymore. All they talk about is escape routes, better neighborhoods, better countries, better exit plans. Hope gets replaced by logistics. Everyone is waiting for something better, but somewhere else. Then people stop believing that the city can improve. They stop fighting for it. It doesn't happen all at once, but you can definitely sense it. There's no announcement, no farewell speech. People just disappear. First is the people who can afford to leave. The doctors, engineers, researchers, people who are in demand in the West. People who still believe that things could actually be better. And then they figured it out the hard way that, no, it doesn't work like that in our country. These people, they don't leave angrily. They leave tired. And there's a very interesting excuse they all make when they leave this country, that this is all temporary. I'm just going to be back. I just need some experience. I just need to figure things out just for a few years, just for work. But it's not really temporary, is it? Because once you understand how successful systems work, why would you want to go back to a broken system? You won't. They tell themselves that I'll come back once things get better, but they never get better because these people are not running towards something. They're running away from something. And this is how easily a city loses not just talent, but also pressure. Pressure to improve, pressure to reform, pressure to perform, pressure to be better. And now the people who could have demanded this are no longer here. And those who stayed behind aren't weaker. It's just that they don't have any other choice. Tied down by family, finances, responsibility, and over time, even their anger fades into fatigue. This is how brain drain happens. Here, brain drain feels less like a tragedy and more like an escape plan, which only pushes more people to leave. This is a perfect loop, a perfect feedback loop. The people who question things are gone, and the people who stayed have learned to stay silent. And the ones stuck in between adapt. When corruption becomes background noise, survival replaces dignity. That is all for today. I'll see you in the next one.